Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Hamnet, starring Jesse Buckley and Paul Mescal, directed by Chloe Zhao. Now, I have seen this in theaters, but what will I think of it? Well, will it be more or less? I remember liking it, but will it be better than I remember or worse than I remember? Let's get into this movie and find out. The movie tells the story of a woman named Agnes, played by Jessie Buckley, in one of her best performances, and probably should win the Oscar for this performance, as she calls an eagle to her arm, in which I swear is a neat trick as she feeds the bird. And Will, played by Gladiator 2's Paul Mescal, whom sadly is not nominated for his performance, but he is really good here, as well, teaching some children to read. And next scene, Will goes to the garden and meets Agnes, as he also meets the bird, and he wants to see Agnes again while she says she can't. And they have beautiful chemistry throughout the movie, and Agnes comes home and is abused by her family. And same goes to Will, which is pretty sad but effective. And despite this movie is based on how Hamlet was born, as the story the world knows of today, I get the impression Paul Mescal's character is William Shakespeare because of the title of this movie. And guess what? I was right. And kudos to director Chloe Zhao for not saying his last name at all, as that was a smart decision made by her, except for maybe when that little boy says it at the end. Will says Agnes in the forest and gets given in the forest and she gives him a hard time, and he says he's a storyteller and tells her a romance story, and they slowly fall in love and make love to each other. And there are times the movie was slow and made me sleepy, but don't get me wrong, I'm so far liking this movie very much, as the cast of both actors quite tremendously, with Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal, who's a perfect William Shakespeare in my opinion. Agnes learns she's pregnant with a baby, and her parents don't approve of this, like Will's parents don't approve either. But Agnes's brother, no, yeah, it's Agnes's brother, Bartholomew, who's played by Joel Alwyn, whom I reviewed before in The Brutalist, The Favorite, and Kinds of Kindness, is happy for her as well. Will works for his family as well as they abuse him, as well as the acting in this is quite tremendous, as Agnes gives birth in the middle of the forest to a baby girl named Susanna, which felt believable as Will swims and helps taking care of Susanna for a bit, as he seems depressed, and the cinematography was beautiful, and I was shocked this didn't get nominated for best cinematography, as it looks very well shot, as this movie is well done and absolutely well made. Will gets abused by his father while working for him and hits him back and says, "That is the last time you'll ever hit me," and while he's upset at night because he doesn't know what to do, and he wants himself to stay away from Agnes and Susanna, as he's a violent person because he lost his ways. And next day comes, and Agnes and Bartholomew about, and they talk about how Will can't sleep, and he says he wants to go to London, but she can't join Will in London quite yet, living in the house Will lives in, and she's pregnant again while she wants to go to the forest, but the maid can't let her go to the forest. And next thing you know, the house floods and she gives birth to twins, Hamnet and Judith, as Judith almost doesn't survive at first, but eventually she breathes, which is powerful filmmaking by director Chloe Zhao. And the costume designing was well done. We pick up with Hamnet and Judith as, I want to say, 5, maybe 7-year-old kids, as I'm led to believe they dress each other, and Susanna is, I believe, 10, while Will is home from London teaching students English literature to students. And the family is wonderfully cast as they prepared a play for Agnes to watch with Susanna, Judith, and Hamnet in the backyard doing some gardening, and Will teaching Hamnet how to sword fight. And the score was very good, and one piece of it at the end of the movie, which reminded me of another movie, and I'll get there when I get there. Will asks Hamnet to be brave, to look over his mother, Agnes, Susanna, and Judith, and makes sure nobody treats them horribly the day before Will leaves for London again, and says goodbye to Hamnet again and again. And Hamnet misses his father, while Will makes comedies and tragedies of plays, which were touching scenes, as some of the scenes were touching but at the same time depressing. Hamnet tries to awaken Judith, but she can't seem to wake up and gets the adults, including Agnes, to look at Judith as she gets some kind of fever and that puts her in a coma. While Will is in London and gets the word by the bird from the beginning of the movie about Judith, and Susanna comes to help as well, while a maid named Mary, played by Emily Watson, is there as well. And she has very little to do in this movie, but she has a great role in her as well. Meanwhile, Hamnet trades places with Judith, and suddenly he gets the fever, while Judith feels better and Will comes in by the time Hamnet passes away, which was very depressing for a child to die from a bad coma fever. And now I understand why William Shakespeare made a story about Hamnet as Hamlet, as they are the same name, and it makes perfect sense. After Hamnet's death and the arrival of Will, Judith is extremely sad about her twin brother's death, as he did it for her, and Will realizes Hamnet is the one who died. And these are some tragic scenes, while shot too dark, but remember, there was no light back in the day, and I complained about that in The Bride, where it was in the 1930s, and there would have been light at that point, and they had the light candles back then. And director Chloe Zhao does make the right choices, as she does a great job with the movie. Agnes and Will have an argument about how he's never here and leaves back for London after his son just died. And why the hell would he do that, even after Hamnet's death, which I'll never get, while Susanna reads to Judith while Will is home and talk about Paris. And Agnes doesn't want to talk to Will, as they talk quietly about how he's never there once again. And Will writes a story about Hamlet and reacts to a scene from the play, and the screenplay is very well written, in my opinion. Will reenacts a line that we know from Hamlet, which is, "To be or not to be, that is the question." And I wish I knew the whole line, but the way Paul Mescal acts in that scene was absolutely brilliant. And he sets up the stage and hands out flyers about the play of a tragedy called Hamlet, as Agnes gets a visit from her stepmother about the play being a tragedy. And she goes to London with Bartholomew, to see Will on the day of the play, but they miss him, and the play is about to begin, and it's very packed. It's a packed performance, and Agnes tries to get to the front of the stage, and it begins, and one of the act performances played by Noah Jupe, whom I reviewed as he was in A Quiet Place and Ford vs. Ferrari, and his little brother Jacob B. Jupe played Hamnet as well, as in a very well done performance. The play begins with Agnes being a little disruptive, and she hears Hamnet's name being said, and she's upset about it, and gets closer and closer to the front of the stage and sees Will in the play playing a character, as everyone continuously watches the play. And Agnes begs Will to look at her in the middle of the performance, in which he does, as well as the actor playing Hamlet while in white makeup, which made me think he's a ghost. And he goes backstage to clean himself off, and we get Hamlet saying the famous monologue, "To be or not to be," like I brought up before. And this is a powerful scene and very well acted by the actors. While the play is still going, they witness a sword fight being acted on stage, and of course, after it's all done and Hamlet dies, we get a piece of score that, I swear to God, sounded a hell of a lot like Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. If you've seen that movie, compare the two scores, because I swear to God, I was thinking the same damn score. But that's one minor issue I had with the movie, as Will walks to the backstage and Agnes smiles at him once more, and the climax made this into a very good movie. But how good was this movie, and should it take home the Best Picture trophy? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this movie a 9.0 out of 10. Jessie Buckley gives one of her best performances and probably should win the Best Actress Oscar trophy for this performance, although I'm kind of sad Paul Mescal wasn't nominated for his performance at the Oscars. But he was really good here too, and they have such beautiful chemistry throughout the movie. and it's sad but quite effective. And despite they never say Will's last name except for maybe one at the end, and the title of this movie, and I get the impression Will's last name was Shakespeare, and guess what? I was right. And kudos to director Chloe Zhao for never saying Will's last name, except for maybe at the end, as that was a smart decision made by her, and as the movie was kind of slow and made me sleepy. But don't get me wrong, I really like this movie as it is very much. By the casting director did the right thing with casting Jesse Buckley and Paul Mescal, who's a perfect William Shakespeare in my opinion. The acting was quite tremendous as it was believable, and the cinematography was beautiful, and I was shocked this didn't get a nomination for Best Cinematography, as it was well shot, as this movie is well done, well made, and it's powerfully told by director Chloe Zhao, and the costume designing was well done, and the score was great as well. But one issue I had with it, there was a piece of score that at the end of the film that sounded a hell of a lot like Denis Villeneuve's Arrival, which is a minor issue I had with the movie. The production design and set decoration was very well crafted throughout this movie, as this is a beautiful film that is getting a strong recommendation because, like I said, it's well done, well shot, and well made by director Chloe Zhao, as some of the scenes were touching and at the same time depressing. And if this wins Best Picture Oscar over Sinners or one battle after another, I wouldn't be too shocked like I was last year with Anora winning Best Picture with those three films. As those three films are much better than Anora, in my opinion, as this would go on my top 3 favorite movies of this year, or of last year, excuse me. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this, and now we'll be back in a few minutes with The Secret Agent. And until then, and the Oscar goes to...